Namaste and a very warm welcome everyone.
Welcome to Mimamsa Manch. We are so glad you could join us.
All right, to get us started, I want to kick things off with a story. It's a thought experiment, really, designed to get us thinking about the very idea of justice. Okay, so here's the setup. Picture this. You are the driver of a runaway trolley car, and you are faced with an absolutely impossible choice. The brakes are totally shot. You're flying down the track at 60 miles an hour, and, up ahead on the track, you see 5 workers. If you just keep going, you know they'll all die. You're feeling totally helpless, right? But then you spot it. There's a side track off to the right, and on that track, there's just one worker. You realize you can steer the trolley, killing the one person but saving the other 5. So the question is, what's the right thing to do?
You know, whenever this question gets asked, the results are almost always the same. The vast majority of people say, yep, turn the trolley, steer it onto the side track.
And the logic behind it feels pretty solid, doesn't it? It's a horrible situation, no doubt. But hey, better that one person dies so that 5 people can live. That feels like a really powerful moral argument.
Okay, but what if we tweak the scenario just a little bit? Let's take that same principle and put it to the test in a different situation.
So this time, you're not the driver anymore. Nope. You're just an onlooker, a bystander on a bridge, and you're watching this whole nightmare play out below you. The brakes are gone, the trolley's barreling towards those 5 people. You feel completely helpless, until you notice something. Standing right next to you on the bridge is a very, very large man. And a thought crosses your mind. You could give him a little shove. He'd fall right onto the tracks, his weight would stop the trolley, saving the 5. But of course, he would die in the process.
And what's fascinating is, when you ask people this question, the answers do a complete 180. The overwhelming majority say, no way. I am not pushing that man.
So, what just happened? What happened to that principle we all seem to agree on just a minute ago? You know, save 5 lives even if it means sacrificing 1. Why does our gut feeling, our moral intuition, just flip so completely? Well, this feeling of being pulled in 2 different directions, it actually highlights 2 totally different, competing ways that we think about morality.
The first way of thinking is what we call consequentialist reasoning, and the second is categorical reasoning. Let's actually break down what these 2 ideas are all about.
So, first up is consequentialist reasoning. This one's pretty straightforward. Morality is all about the consequences of your actions. The right thing to do is whatever leads to the best overall outcome. The most famous version of this is utilitarianism. You've probably heard of it, the whole greatest good for the greatest number idea.
But that feeling we had, that hesitation to push the man off the bridge, that's pointing to something else entirely. That's categorical reasoning. This view says that morality is about certain duties, certain rights, and that some things are just plain wrong, period. Doesn't matter what the consequences are. And the big name you need to know here is Immanuel Kant.
Okay, so we've been talking about these thought experiments, these hypotheticals. But let's bring this down to earth with a real-life story. A story where these very principles were tested in the most extreme way imaginable. This takes us back to the 19th century in a famous British law case, the Queen versus Dudley and Stephens. It's the absolutely tragic story of the yacht Mignonette. 4 guys in the crew get shipwrecked in the South Atlantic. We're talking over 1,000 miles from any land. So they're in this tiny lifeboat with just 2 cans of turnips to their name. But the days turn into weeks, and their situation gets more and more desperate. By day 19, they've got nothing left. And that's when the captain, a man named Dudley, makes a horrifying decision. He decides they're going to kill the weakest person on board, a 17-year-old orphan cabin boy named Richard Parker, so that the other 3 could eat and survive.
Now, when they were finally rescued and put on trial for murder, their defense was pure consequentialism. They basically said, look, we had to do it. It was a necessity. Their argument was simple. Better for 1 to die so that 3 could live. Plus, they argued the cabin boy was an orphan, was near death anyway, and the other 3 guys had families waiting for them back home.
The prosecution, on the other hand, went with the categorical argument.
Murder is murder. It doesn't matter what the situation is. And this staggering quote from the captain's diary, where he calls the act having our breakfast, it certainly didn't do their case any favors.
So this all begs the question, right? Why do we even do this? Why do we grapple with these deeply unsettling scenarios? What's the point of it all?
Well, the goal isn't really about learning new information. It's about taking the things we think we know for sure, our everyday beliefs, and making them feel strange. These stories, these hypotheticals, they're designed to make us stop and really look at the assumptions we live by. They provoke a whole new way of seeing. Now, it's really tempting to just throw your hands up and be a skeptic, right? To say, oh, there are no right or wrong answers, it's all relative. But the philosopher Immanuel Kant had a great response to that. He called skepticism a resting place for reason, but not somewhere you can live permanently. It's an evasion, really, because we can't just opt out of these questions. We live out an answer to them every single day of our lives, whether we think about it or not.
And that's really what this is all about, this whole process of moral reflection. It's about confronting what we believe, turning it on its head to make it strange, and then waking up what Kant called the restlessness of reason. It's about starting that journey and just seeing where it leads you.
Because there's a certain risk that comes with this journey of self-examination. Once you've seen the familiar as something strange, you can never quite go back. And that kind of self-knowledge, well, as unsettling as it might be,